Welcome to How I Broke That.
Hello, Breakers. We are here to share a very important message with you today as we interview Meredith Wiedemer, a former executive director at Morgan Stanley turned integrative health coach living in Moldova. Meredith has not only been a breaker in her career, she is shattering the norm by putting herself second and Ukrainians first as millions of individuals and families flee war. She's spending her days and nights supporting Ukrainian refugees in Moldova. So how did Meredith go from corporate America and health coaching to Ukrainian refugees and helping them? How have her efforts changed lives in the region? And how can we support her important work from afar? Listen and learn how we can be more like Meredith as a breaker and help others. Meredith, welcome into the show. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm so humbled by that introduction, first of all. Thank you so much. And I'm so honored to be here and so nice to connect with you and your community.
Thank you. So we have to be very honest that you and I have basically known each other since day zero for you.
Day zero.
And so the first part of this show is really giving people an idea of your journey, personally and professionally. And then the second half, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about your humanitarian work and how people can help. But again, let's be honest, let's start from day zero and how we know each other and kick us off there.
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, just hi to your community. Thank you much for taking the time, to listen to my story. I really appreciate it. And I hope you guys walk away feeling impacted and empowered to get involved in your community in any way. And, hopefully with the refugee crisis that's impacting the world right now. As Josh mentioned, I've known him since day zero. We were next door neighbors, fast friends, crawling and walking next to each other, on our cul-de-sac growing up. And now for me, 40 years later, it's been amazing to reconnect with him. So like Josh, I grew up in Maryland, very, very nice suburb of Maryland in Bethesda, and went to the University of Maryland, was a poli-sci major, and took my first job thinking I wanted to be an attorney. So I went and was a paralegal in Washington, D.C., and I worked for clients for their financial transactions. So, big top 10 banks internationally. And I decided I did not want to be a lawyer. So maybe the first break. And
we like breaks though. Those are good.
Yeah. So that was my first break, and just sort of realizing, in college, I thought I wanted to go maybe work on the Hill, work in government. Then I thought maybe I wanted to go into law. Really, really liked it, but I realized it just wasn't a good fit for me. And I actually ended up moving to New York City, where I got my first job working on credit default swaps, which many people now are more familiar with than they ever were back in the early 2000s. And so for 8 years, I worked at Morgan Stanley. I had a really incredible career there. I worked in operations, starting early as an associate, and just really, busted myself working 24 hours a day, sleeping with my BlackBerry underneath my pillow, like so many do working in the investment banking world in New York. And before I left, I was an executive director, managing interest rate derivatives in North America. And why did I leave Morgan Stanley? Well, my husband, who was an attorney at the time, decided to switch careers, and also sort of felt like, maybe we're both breakers. I don't know, sort of felt like maybe it also just wasn't the right fit for him. And we moved back home to the Washington, D.C. area, where he began working for the State Department and became a diplomat. And we had our first child. And that was sort of a huge pivot for our lives. And we left sort of our comfortable East Coast life and picked up with a 6-month-old and moved across the world to Mumbai. And that was my husband's first posting. And from there, I was not able to work anymore. It was not, one of the benefits from post-COVID and COVID, the silver lining is you can work virtually, right? Like you and I are able to have this conversation from two different parts of the world. But back then I was hoping to work for Morgan Stanley, and where we got our housing, I would have had an hour and a half commute each way, with the traffic. So it would have
Yes.
been pretty crazy. So it was really, really sort of a stark difference for me to go from executive at a firm at a large investment bank to staying at home full time with my son. But I feel really blessed now. He's 7, and I have 2 other daughters who are 5 and 3. And so I feel really blessed. For the last 7 years, I've had the privilege and honor of staying home with them, always being involved in other entrepreneurial mother, being the president of an international mothers group and being really involved in the school. And then a few years ago, I felt, just like looking ahead at what, the next several years of my life were going to look like, and just sort of feeling that calling that I, wanted to go back to work, right? Get back in the workplace. And while I loved, not everybody is a big fan of corporate America, but I think I just maybe got lucky with where I worked. The environment was really supportive. I wanted to figure out something that I was passionate about and turn it into a career for myself. So I went back to school. I've always had a passion for healthy living. I've always been very active with sports and, prioritizing my health. And, I have some people who are close to me in my life who have struggled with health. And, it just felt like a natural fit for me to go back to school, and I decided to become an integrative health coach. And what that means is you look at the whole person when you look at their health and healing, and you really look at the person as a whole person to try to, to sort of heal with whatever is going on. So, and that was a good fit for me because I was able to take that anywhere, anywhere we live in the world. I can work virtually with clients. I host, wellness groups, and I do things for the embassies where I am or for the expat community. And then I'm also able, depending on the language, take on local clients. So, I've been doing that at our last 2 posts in Baku, Azerbaijan, which is where we were before, and then now here in Moldova. So that is like the quick,
That's
I
it.
don't know, 5-minute, I don't know.
No, you got us there.
That was, yeah.
But
So
you skipped over one part I wanted to ask about. I mean,
oh gosh, sorry.
no.
It's hard to reflect on your life,
Sleeping with the BlackBerry.
Yes.
You said, I think, and I would have to I'm not going to quote you directly, but that we, kind of moved on, because your husband's job changed. But were you also kind of potentially at a breaking point, considering that you were sleeping with your BlackBerry?
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't thought about that for a really long time, but that's a really good question. And before, when we first moved out back to DC, when I was leaving New York, we had just gotten engaged and we were going to move to DC, and Morgan Stanley has an office in Baltimore. And not that I'd been wanting to leave, but it was then probably around 2012 where I was like, do I like what I'm doing? And I really like the people. But it was intense. Like, it was physically exhausting. And I actually thought about going back to school to become a nutritionist. And I thought we're going to be in DC for 2 years. And then I ended up, sort of flaking out because we were planning a wedding and I was making a really good salary, just to be honest. So the seed was planted, though, right? The seed was planted, but I didn't give into it because, again, I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and just still sort of like focused on the dollar sign. And I sort of suppressed that urge to do something that had a deeper meaning to me. But again, it really wasn't, I think, until I was forced to leave and that I had my old family and was able to sort of take a deep breath and look and really ask myself that question, what do I want to do? Now I don't sleep with any phone. I like to have my phone like on silent, and I'll do not disturb. I don't want to be disturbed in the middle of the night, where before I would answer a call at 2 a.m. if there was a problem going on in Singapore.
So what could you, if you put your integrative health coaching hat on, and we have people in this audience who are totally cool with breaking shit, including potentially their careers.
Yeah.
What would you tell them to ask themselves, before to maybe plant the seed, but let it grow?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, with my integrative health coach hat on, one of the things I do with my clients is, and I wish I had it in front of me to show you, but we do this. It's called the Circle of Life exercise,
Mm.
and so it's actually a pie chart. And I'm going to hold my hands up since you are on video. So, in the pie, right, it's sort of like your circle of life, and in on the piece of paper, basically it's like a pie chart, and in each pie there's a different part of your life that would make you whole. So, career, physical activity, relationships, home cooking, spirituality. So each thing each pie chart has a part of your life. And what I ask clients to do is actually put a dot somewhere in the pie about how satisfied they are with that piece of their life. So the closer the dot to the center of the circle, the less satisfied, and the more satisfied they are with that part of their life, they put it towards the outside of the circle. And the idea is at the end of the exercise, you sort of connect each dot. And if all your dots are close to the outside, you're going to sort of have like a nice little round circle. But most of us, our lives are very, very, very jagged, right? Maybe your career is really good, but the joy and relationships and home cooking are towards the center of the circle. So from there, you sort of can see where your life is imbalanced. And
Mm.
so what I would say to your question, if someone was sort of at a crossroads in their career or sort of figuring out, is it time to break it? Is it time to switch careers? Is it time to do something different? Take a look at your whole life and figure out where there is an imbalance. And instead of being afraid of that imbalance, lean into that imbalance and
Mm.
you will probably find the answer there. So it's actually just really leaning in towards that area where you potentially have been avoiding. And that's where you'll probably find your happiness. So for me, I mean, I'd always been into health, but I was sort of ignoring that part of my life, right? Like I was like eating in the car, eating at my desk. Like I was never taking any time for myself. I was just like cramming in a workout at the end of the day just to like check that box, right?
Hmm.
Where now where before I was looking at how many calories I was burning, where now look more at like the type of exercise I'm doing. Is it nourishing for my my entire body, my mind and my heart? And so for me, I ignored that. But once was able to take a step back and figure out what I wanted my passion to be, and I sort of leaned into that discomfort. So I would say, look where your life is imbalanced, and then lean into that imbalance and sort of,
Yeah,
try to balance the scale. I hope that
that's
makes
cool.
sense.
That's helpful. What I want to do is kind of put a pin in that a little bit because we're going to transition to your humanitarian work. And I think it would be interesting to understand and a little bit put you on the spot here as a friend to ask you,
Uh-oh.
what are you doing now, and what do you plan to do for yourself in the future? Because what you're experiencing now is probably something that most people in our audience have never experienced. And I'm sure you're in it now and you're rolling and you're going and you're doing and you're helping. But what is
Hmm.
Meredith Yurko, who I knew, with
Yeah.
that name, kind of going to do to take care of herself? But we'll put a pin in that for now and we can answer
We
that.
will. I
Okay.
have a pin in
You
that
know,
for myself too.
and you should. Good. I'm glad you do. All right, Meredith. So this is the time in our show where we generally let our sponsor Click2 kind of take over for a little while, but we're going to put Click2 aside for now because we have more important things to talk about. And we will go deeper on this subject, but let's use this minute or two where we had our sponsor, and let's talk about the Sunflower Center, which is your latest efforts to help the Ukrainian refugees.
Thanks so much, Josh. So I'm really excited. The Sunflower Center is going to be a hybrid space for mothers and children who have fled Ukraine. And it'll be a hybrid center where they can come and receive free goods like food and baby diapers. But while they're there, most importantly, they can receive the support that they so desperately need. And that will be through trauma-based counseling for mothers, parenting classes, as well as early childhood development for refugee children, who many currently don't have a support system, here from an education perspective. And in terms of donating, you can always donate directly through international wire transfer to our partner NGO, which is Family Federation of Moldova, which is where we will be opening up our center, or you can donate privately to me. And I have a separate account where all money is being transferred directly through an international wire transfer to our NGO. And that's through PayPal, which is meredith.yurko@gmail.com, or through Venmo at Meredith YW. So thank you so much. Every dollar helps. I've had people donating their kids' allowances, lemonade stands, and people doing company matching. So, every dollar helps. And, just to be crystal clear, there is no skimming at the top. 100% of all donations go directly back to the Ukrainian refugees. Thanks,
Okay,
Josh.
cool. And we'll put that all in the show notes. And, we've, I don't know how many shows we've done, and basically what happens is you realize that all of your background, different careers lead up to the opportunity to really do something amazing, whether it's, writing a book or selling a business or whatever it is. In your case, your background at Morgan Stanley, your background as a health coach have all come together in Moldova for you to be able to help the refugees. And so kind of talk to us about the days and months leading up to this. You told me
Sure.
you knew, everybody knew this was going to happen. Were you preparing? And then talk about the Smokehouse Donation Center and how that kind of led to Sunflower.
Yeah, so you just got my bio, and not once did I, mention an NGO or a humanitarian crisis or anything like that. So, for the last now 7 weeks, I have been completely engrossed, not with a BlackBerry under my pillow, because I don't know who's using BlackBerries anymore, but completely dedicated to the Ukrainian refugee crisis here in Moldova. I mean, probably 7 weeks ago, most people, the majority of people, didn't even know Moldova was on the map. So leading up to this refugee crisis and this invasion, there were warning signs from the U.S. government that this was going to happen, right? And I think everybody here, we've been to Ukraine a few times, and they are a neighboring country, and I think we were all just praying and hoping that we were wrong, but just sort of being connected and plugged in with the news here, we sort of felt that it was inevitable. And when it happened on February 24th, for the Thursday and Friday, I was just completely glued to the television. And like the rest of the world, just shocked at the images, and you just couldn't believe this was happening. But one of the things that stood out to me, aside from, the horrible atrocities that were beginning to happen, was that none of the major networks mentioned Moldova as a bordering country. It was grayed out. So Moldova is the only bordering country that is not part of the EU. And it just felt a little bit weird, right? That we were right next to a country at war, and we were getting hundreds of thousands of refugees starting to float over the border. And our country was barely mentioned.
Why do you think they did that?
Because it's a small country. I mean, our country, the country here is only like 2.6 million people. It's really small. Because it's not an EU country. And I think it was just oftenly grayed out. And it's not widely talked about in international, from an international political spectrum, right? So it's a former Soviet country, and over the last year, it has sort of switched. They, had their president Maya Sandu was recently elected over a year ago, and they, she's recently applied to be a member of the EU. So there's been quite a switch in the government. I would highly recommend everyone go look her up and the kind of incredible woman she is and what she's doing for this country. But for 2 days, I just was glued to the news. And one of my friends, who is the director of programming here for Peace Corps, just also sort of like felt a call to help. And she contacted the owner, David Smith, who is a former Peace Corps member as well. He's an American, and he owns a smokehouse barbecue and grill downtown. And during COVID, half of their restaurant had to close down, like so many others. So he had this empty space, and the two of them had this idea to open up a donation center. And they thought, drop off groceries, and we'll get a few refugees who are coming in and looking for help. And my friend Hannah called me and said, like, hey, can you like pick up some groceries? And I was like, oh my gosh, definitely. Like, I've been just like waiting, previously I sort of just like felt this call to help. And the first thing I thought was like, we're going to do a bake sale at the school and raise money and like donate that money. So me and a few other moms got together and started that effort. And, I went to the store over the weekend and dropped off a bunch of groceries. And I, said like, what else can I do? And I said, I'll show up on Monday to volunteer. And that Saturday night, I thought like the groceries that I just purchased and the cupboards, the canned foods that I cleared out in my kitchen was not going to be enough. So I posted on Instagram just to like my family and friends, like, hey, if anyone wants to send money, here's my Venmo. Feel free to donate, and 100% of your donations will go towards this effort. I mean, I thought maybe I would get like $500. I thought people would donate like $20 here and there. And I woke up the next morning because of the time difference, and I already had $6,000. And so, that goes a lot. That it's like, you can get like 4 pounds of cucumbers here for like 10 cents, right? The money goes really, really far, right? It's the poorest European country. So I was just blown away. So, I bought more groceries, which was amazing. And from day one, just the word got out and people started showing up. Several hundred a day, a couple hundred the first day. We started seeing 500 a day. We started seeing 800, 1,000, and we were serving up to 2,000 people on a daily basis after 6-7 weeks.
Meredith, so for all the shit that social media gets, for, kind of some of the bad stuff it does, Instagram has been a lifeline to you. And I want to talk about two things. First of all, the stories that you write every day, and we get to read them. Those are important to us. How important are they to you? Every evening to write that.
Yeah. So to your point, yes, Instagram can go either way, right? But I think the most important thing, like with anything in this world, it's how you utilize it, what your intention are, and what you hope to get out of it. So for me, my intention was to raise money, but also to show the people who were donating their money the impact that they were having. So the way it was working was, for me, every day when I came home from the center, it almost became like my daily journal, like my daily diary. So I would post just in that one screen an Instagram story of how people's donations were used, but also a story, emotion, an interaction from the day, right? So anything from speaking to a mother who was trying to get over to Bucharest and she had no money. The only person, she didn't know anyone in Moldova. She only knew one person in Romania. She was there alone with her 2 sons, and she needed $40. She just needed $40 to get to safety. And I was able to give that to her without any restriction. So you're just writing about stories like that. People coming in with broken shoes, right? Their holes are busted. I mean, remember, this started in late February, early March. So it was snowing here. It was freezing. And it was just really devastating seeing people coming in, freezing out from the cold, just looking for a warm place to be, and for, tea and coffee and diapers and really everything. So on a daily basis, I was posting those stories. And oftentimes crises that happen around the world, especially in America, we feel very far removed. So, and I've been in that situation before, right? I've seen conflicts from around the world happening from the safety of my own home in America. And I feel like for me, this was my first time so close to a crisis. And there's so many people in America and all over the world that want to do something. And they don't want to just donate to an organization and not, just be a statistic. And what I was able to do is, I think, make people feel connected, that the money that they were donating, no matter how much it was really having a direct impact. And so I was getting responses just from people saying thank you for what I was doing, but also really emotional responses from friends and family, and then other people, that I did not know, that all of a sudden started following me on an account where I previously posted like healthy, family friendly meals, that was my Instagram account. It was like fun ideas of, get your kids to eat healthy and also eat yourself.
Definitely broke that norm, right?
Yeah. So there's, so, and that was the thing. I wasn't posting things on on, I just sort of felt like one story, right, which would give people the option they could skip through it, or, they could take a minute and push their finger down on the screen and just read
Right.
it. And I often posted pictures of where their money was going. We purchased a lot of strollers. And again, those are things that you wouldn't necessarily think that should be in a donation center. I think people think like, food, hygiene, shampoo, soap, like the critical things. But when you're a mom getting on a bus or getting in a stranger's car or getting in, a man who is, converted his taxi business to get women and children safely over the border, you don't have time to get your stroller, right? There's pregnant women coming over who've invested so much money into, preparing for a baby, right? We helped women get baby cribs, baby bathtubs. Those are things that are critical when you're a mom and critical when you're a child that you need. And you can't bring those things over in a border. So I posted a lot of pictures with, I feel like I'm getting emotional, like going back to these first days and even the last days giving strollers out, and moms just like weeping, right? Because they had a place that they could sit their child, instead of carrying like an infant around the city in the freezing cold with all of their things. So, yeah, sorry, I just need to pause because it's just a lot. To remember those stories and just the faces, and it's Chisinau, such a small city. I mean, I've seen moms that came into the center, like walking around the city now. And so it's incredible too, to see people now who are here, that are here permanently, right? They don't know when they're going to go home. So, it's really been an incredible effort at the Smokehouse Donation Center. So, I'd love to give you like a couple stats just so people understand. I think it's hard to know like what a donation center looks like. And there's so many different, but at the end, like we were having, because we were well funded by private donations, we were able to really provide, and people were waiting in line 3-4 hours to get into our center just for a small bag of canned food. And, we switched early on and started getting fresh produce because we realized like we were running out of food every day, and people would rather eat, a fresh piece of bread or an apple versus like, canned food. So, so people, and basically we were open for over 6 weeks, and we had an impact of 38,000 refugees. We supported over 175 shelters, community centers, churches around the country, which included 11 border shelters. And through our door, we had over 7,800 families or individuals walk in looking for help. And it's my understanding that our private donation center was one of the largest in the city, and it was completely privately funded. We had no partnerships with any government or large organization. It was all private donations and NGO where the president is also a former Peace Corps member, called Friends of Moldova. And so after 6 weeks of working so long and hard, and some of the donations were starting to run dry, and we were basically outgrowing the space. Like it became a physical, like we had to have the police there on a daily basis to manage the crowds. And just after a few kids ran into the street and the mob, it just felt like it was an okay time to close. And also some of the larger organizations are starting to get set up, issuing food vouchers and cash assistance. And again, this whole time, the donation center was meant to be these grassroots efforts, right? They're grassroots because there's an immediate need and you have no restrictions, and really anyone like time, there's no bureaucracy, right? Like there was never a time where we were like sitting down and like assessing, what should we do? Like, what's our strategic move, right? We were just like, bang, bang, bang. Like people need X, we're going to get it. Like we're going to figure out a way, right? We had processes, we had procedures, something that I recalled from my Morgan Stanley days, like trying to streamline procedures. So we were being proactive and not reactive. But, for the last several weeks, the larger organizations have just been assessing and hiring and figuring out how to respond. And the grassroots efforts like Smokehouse Donation Center have just bucked up and just made it happen.
Yeah, I'm going to make a generalization here about all the strong women that I've known in my life and that I've worked with, in the PTAs. It seems like you take your experience being a mom, you take your experience professionally, and you take whatever's thrown at you and you succeed. And it seems like that's what you're doing all at once here. So,
There were a
thank you for doing
lot
that.
of moms there volunteering.
Yeah,
So
I
it's true.
bet.
I think because they can just get shit done. They can
Yeah,
multitask, and like nothing in the moment, like they are not phased, right? They are
yeah,
not phased.
totally. No, I'm with you.
So yeah,
But
thanks for that
now
shout out.
it's true. It's totally true. So as we kind of wrap this up, we need to
Yeah,
hit one of the most important parts here.
sure.
So, being a mom and being able to take anything that comes at you in your Morgan Stanley background, and being a health coach, did you kind of combine all those things and it led you to your latest calling, probably not your last, which is Sunflower Center? And can you talk about Sunflower Center again, deeper, and how people can
Yeah,
donate?
sure, definitely. So, before I get into that, I just want to give people some scope on the landscape here, right? So, Moldova is the poorest European country, and when you look at the statistics of how many refugees have actually come over all the borders, Moldova is on the lowest, right? But per capita,
Mhm.
Moldova actually has the most refugees living here and have passed through. So there's been close to 400,000 refugees that have crossed over the border,
Wow.
and 1/3 of those have stayed. So close to 100,000. So living in a really small city, I mean, I can feel it. I mean, there's the people, the influx has been crazy. And what's interesting is the refugees are not in camps here. It's not like what you would see in Africa or on some of the television, but most refugees are actually staying in Moldovan homes. So
Hmm.
about 80% of the refugees who have come over the border, instead of going to a camp outside, they've been welcomed into homes of Moldovans. And that is one of the most incredible things that I have seen here. And so when you just take a step back, like that's the sort of people that are here, right? So those are the people that I've been partnering with on a day-to-day basis here. So into the crisis, I got taken to one of the government shelters that was a converted COVID center. And they had people just like sleeping in box rooms, and they had kids playing on dirty floors. And it just was really, it just gutted me. And the person that took me there, his name is Andrei Asanu, and he is the director of a Family Federation of Moldova. And he's a psychiatrist here. And we connected really early on. I helped him open a few shelters with donated goods. And he just wanted to show me what the reality was of people who were coming in early on. And, you sort of talked about, my experience as a health coach and what I sort of do on a day-to-day basis. And I just saw distress and stress in these mothers' eyes and these children. And there were reports of, children waking up in the middle of the night with nightmares, crying for their dad, crying for siblings that died on the way. I mean, bedwetting. I mean, it's horrible. I mean, I'm sorry to be so forward, but I just, you started hearing those reports, and I really quickly realized, and this goes back to my health coaching, like food is not the only thing that completes you as a person, right? If the rest of your life is in complete shambles, like that food may not be the sustenance that you need on that day. And these kids weren't able to get into school. They had nothing to do. So I sort of just had this idea, like, is there a way that we can support these women, like outside of just giving them free food? So just to jump ahead, sorry, to what Sunflower Center is so, making a few partners here over the last few weeks, I found two really solid partners who have the same passion as me. And so we are opening a place called the Sunflower Center. And the idea with the Sunflower Center is to have a place where a mother who is here alone or, here with a small support group can come and get a donation. They can come to the donation center, get free food, get free diapers. But while they're there, they can also sign up their children for free early childhood development classes. And through these classes, in America, right, you think of like a preschool. And the idea is that It's going to be play-based education with art and music therapy. And what we really want to do is give these children a free space to color outside the lines, get their hands dirty, dance freely and crazy, and sing so loud to music. And what the ultimate idea is, why these kids are engaged in these programs, the mothers are going to get a break, right? They're going to get a break that they so desperately deserve. And while they're there, they can make friends with other refugee moms, as you know, from a support perspective. But we will also have trauma-based counseling that we will be able to give these mothers for free. So what's incredible about this center is they can come for food. Their kids can get, education and have a great time while they're there. And then the mothers can also receive the support that they so desperately need. And we're going to be doing parenting classes, one-to-one counseling, as well as group counseling.
And I hold in my hand here something you sent me about the Sunflower Center, and I've read through it several times. And in addition to obviously the amazing work that you talk about here, early childhood development, psychological support, donation center, this looks like it was written by somebody who's got a consulting background. What do you know? And that's amazing. And I just think, jokes aside, obviously the important work you're doing. And I'm happy to see you laugh there.
Yeah.
Because I want to circle back to something that I said, and this will be my last question. And I think this is going to be important to my family who will watch, and your family who will watch, and the people that are in Rockville and in Bethesda, is what are you going to do for yourself to make sure that you are taking care of Meredith? Because this is tough on you too, I would imagine.
It has been tough, and it's been tough on my 3 little kids. I'm used to being home with them when they come home from school, and I haven't for the last 6 weeks. And I've been missing, my former life, but I feel so humbled and privileged that I had the honor to do that. So I'll go back to my little circle of life exercise is, refining that balance and setting boundaries for myself. So, the good thing is at this new Sunflower Center, I have really strong partners, right? So we've all just upfront said what we can commit to do. Like, we want to have maximum input or maximum output with the number of refugees and how much we can, help families walking in our door. But we also acknowledge that in order for us to have the maximum impact, we need to take care of ourselves. So for me, it's really just been setting boundaries. I said 4:00 is my max. I got to be home with my family. I want to be home to support my kids, get them dinner made. So again, it's really just about regaining control of my schedule. I'm really lucky that I have a great nanny and a really supportive husband and family and friends here. But yeah, it's just setting boundaries. It's setting boundaries for myself. It's been good to just get back in the kitchen and make brownies with my kids,
Nice.
the stuff I used to do. But I also feel really privileged that I'm here and I have the opportunity to help these other kids and bring relief and support to these mothers who currently are displaced from their homes, away from their husbands, and don't have a support. I want to be their rock. And that's what's driving me.
Yeah, I think, what you're doing and experiencing is extraordinary. And that's why I wanted to ask you about how you're taking care of yourself. But obviously, given the people that we have in our audience and, that we're human beings, things happen. So hopefully you're giving people advice about how to handle situations. They might not be as severe as what you're experiencing, but how to handle situations and find that balance and find those boundaries after you've potentially experienced the trauma as well.
Thanks, Josh.
So, thank you for taking the time to come onto the show. We will, like you said, we're all trying to do, I hope, what we can to help the situation. And this was
thanks, Josh, for your donation too, by the way.
My pleasure. And I hope that lots of other people will do it. I'm sure they will. And Meredith, what I'd like to do is circle back, if that's okay with you, because you're going to get through this, and you're going to help other people get through it. And other people in our audience are going to experience breakage, and you will be a model for how people can get through the breakage, emerge on the other side, and maybe find a calling in their life that takes them in a brand new, beautiful direction.
Thanks, Josh. I'd love to come back and share, the progress and the success of the Sunflower Center. We're doing our first class next week. And so I'm just really pumped to have an impact, and you're having impact with this show too. Like, you know that as well. You're having an influence on people and helping them get to the other side.
Thank you.
So thanks
So
for that.
cool. We will be in touch, and we will let people know exactly how to donate. And you just stay safe, and we'll be thinking about you and supporting you from all different parts of the world.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Josh.